Welcome everyone to the EED webinar for June 12th on Tuesday. Our theme is Breaking the Chains of Victimhood. And joining us, we have Florian from Hamburg, Philippe from Luxembourg, Alina from Italy, Michelle from Toronto, Cesar from Romania, Andrada from Romania, and Cheryl from Toronto. So welcome everyone. What I'd love to know is what is bringing each of you to this call, because victimhood is pretty wide sweeping and everyone has a different relationship to it. They have different uses for it in their professional work or in just their personal life. Some things to think about, or possibly what are some examples of victimhood you're running into where it's becoming an obstacle for you? Okay, it's stopping the work. Where may you be running into somebody who is addicted to suffering, can't get them out of it? When does victimhood become a problem for you? On the other side, what are you interested to know around false empowerment? Because this is one thing we do a lot, is we really seek power as victims, and we can falsely empower ourselves and then suddenly give it up and push and shove and go right back into that victim place. So. And there may be other things. So I'll go back to the original question: is what's drawing you into this call? What are particular things you're looking for? Anyone can start, and we'll just each speak briefly, and then I'll walk.
You first, if you'd like.
Yeah, sure. That's Philippe. Okay.
Yes. Well, mainly what I'm very interested in is a positive change for myself and also for my customers. In coaching. Yeah. And what I've noted about victimhood is that first, it drains a lot of energy. There's a lot of energy that you put in being a victim that you could actually use for change. So that's one thing. And the other thing is also that I've noted that people who put themselves in voluntarily or involuntarily, in the victim role, when they are in that role, it attracts even more people to them that will make them even more a victim.
Okay. So it's like a vicious circle.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. This draining the energy, it drains your energy. And when you're around somebody who's indulging in their victimhood, that also drains the energy too.
Yes.
So I'm going to include in here energy vampires. We run into those a lot, the people that just suck the life right out of you. Whether it's a poor me thing or a narcissism, both will suck the energy out of you, okay? One is active, one is passive. Okay, great. Who else?
Okay, I'll continue.
Yes.
In management, when managing people, I've seen around people considering or entering into a victim position and then trying to build a victim empire by attracting other people to it. And then it's a very difficult, situation to manage, it's something that made me resonate with, especially when I didn't want, the other people to feel victims. I didn't know how to bring them up from that position.
Okay. You're saying when they enter that, start creating this victim empire around them, and they start gathering people with this same mentality, right? You're saying you don't know how to take them out of it?
Out of it. Especially when you want to implement a change, and those people reflect the old and they are victim of the new something which is put in place.
Exactly. They become the victims of the change process here, and they start holding it back. Great, because I will talk about the victim and the rebel. Okay, it's two sides of the victim.
Right.
Okay, and I love this word, the victim empire, building a victim empire. I love that. It's it really does describe the rebel side of the false empowerment. Okay, great.
So if I may, I will go next because
Okay.
I'm in a move right now. So I'm particularly interested about the shift between victim position and the savior and the persecutor, both from a personal standpoint of view and the coaching point of view.
Okay.
I'm interested particularly in the dynamics of this triangle.
Yeah.
And I'm coming to your webinars because I'm preparing to come to maybe Munich edition
For the fall series.
Yeah, thank you.
Great. Yeah, I will talk about this victim triangle. I'm sure several of you have heard of this victim triangle. Is that in? I think it's in transactional analysis. So you'll have the victim persecutor, but then they both look to a third party, which they're going to draw in a helper or a savior or a mediator or something. Okay, and then this other third party gets drawn into the whole drama cycle as well, which will happen to you if you're doing mediation work or coaching, because your client or clients will start creating that triangle, and how do you stay immune to it. Our last webinar was discussing that briefly, and we can discuss it more this time as well. Okay, great. That was Cesar calling from Romania. So who else?
I can speak up now. So very similar to Cesar, just the learning a bit more about that, the dreaded drama triangle, or I think was it the empowerment dynamic, TED. So yeah, just becoming aware of that, when it happens, how to get out of it, and shifting clients into a mindset, you know, from victim to creator, and how to, you know, manage that.
Great. That actually is one of the main points of this whole thing is moving from victim to creator. And there's two senses to what it is, two sides to being what it is to be a creator. And I'm gonna go through that in quite a lot of detail here.
Great.
And then to say why, and then explain why are they not moving there so easily? Because if we were, then we wouldn't be having this call, right? So, and you mentioned this drama triangle. You mentioned TED. Is that like?
Yeah, it's an acronym for the empowerment dynamic. I think that's the title of the book.
Yeah.
I subscribe to their email, so I get these weekly emails just that talks about different scenarios of what the drama triangle can look like, and how we can shift into all three of the roles of, you know, victim, perpetrator, and rescuer, all in the same relationship with another person.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's quite interesting.
Great. I hadn't heard of the TED, but I'm gonna look that up to start comparing notes, see what they're saying. So also, you know, let me know if something similar or new, and freely also for all of you, freely disagree. Right? You know, if there's something you disagree with, you know, then what's your disagreement? What's going on? That makes this more concrete. I'm not holding my information as precious, okay? It's organic. So if I'm not challenged, don't just challenge because you want to challenge, but I'm saying if something isn't sitting well, just speak up. It makes me be more clear and solid, and I'm willing to question myself as well. Okay, because this work still evolves. And if I didn't have people coming back at me, questioning things, I wouldn't have a good quality system, right? So, all right. Andrada, Cheryl, or Florian, anything you'd also like to add? Some things may be similar and the same, that's fine. And anything else that you want to put in the space here?
Yeah. I was planning mostly to be an observer, but if I were to share my thoughts, of course, I would be interested to know if there's a link with performance, with this attitude. of victimhood. Of course, if it affects, and in what way it would affect efficiency or delivering, and a way to snap out of it, because I think there may be generated some artificial moments of snap out, let's say, for us, in order to help the others or help yourself into getting out of that state.
Okay, that's great. I'm calling that a moment of artificial lucidity or clarity. Lucidity meaning like you're waking up. And you might have this brief moment of waking up and then you go back to sleep into the cycle. It's related to that false empowerment too as well. And coaches and mediators can get fooled by that lucidity or clarity. And we have a way to work around it. And yes, it does affect performance and it does drive performance. Sometimes it can work well and other times it can create problems. So, okay. Who else?
Cheryl here.
Cheryl.
Just to add, for me, I'm curious. I'm curious about this topic. I'm curious about the ways these dynamics may still be playing out in myself and creating saboteurs that dance with clients in certain situations. Yeah, I've also, it's a long time ago, but did a webinar on the power empowerment dynamic. And it's kind of the opposite of this vicious victim cycle with the perpetrator and rescuers. So it's sort of the healthy side of it. And some of it I've incorporated, and some of it I feel like, this is a lifelong journey. And so it just happened to hit me at a moment when I saw your post on Facebook, and I thought, okay, let's just be curious and come and check this out a little further.
Okay. So again, for what I want to add then is let's look at the question: is there a healthy side to this dynamic? Why would we have it? Right? It's not all toxic. Okay.
Great. Thanks.
It becomes toxic when we go to sleep in the suffering and keep recreating the suffering and re-traumatizing ourselves. That's when it starts to get too much, too toxic. If we're not moving through it, not learning from the dynamic, and not evolving through it, right? That's the toxicity.
Right.
So I may explain that a little more, but go ahead.
Thank you. But thank you. No, and perhaps when you become aware of it in clients or other people, how do you start to shift them so that you're not getting caught in it with them, or not facilitating it inadvertently, right?
Yes. Yeah. So how do you shift others when you notice the dynamic coming up and not feed it yourself or get tangled in it? Because it's very easy to do, especially those who are just awakening into a personal growth. They have more self-awareness. They're going to start to see it everywhere. And there's a danger of becoming a crusader or an enabler, right? With all the good intentions of let's heal this and move it through. But I'll talk a bit about that too.
Okay.
Some of the traps that can happen. Okay.
Thanks.
Great. And Florian.
I'm fine with any contributions up till now.
Was there anything else or extra? Because this is very related to what you just learned in Module 2 over the week.
Yeah.
Around these polarities that we go through.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Is there anything in there that comes up to say, please add this in, or this is what I'm now looking at? That I'd like
nothing specific. I might, point at it when I see it, but nothing really specific.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, great. Let me just shut my window here because I don't want there's a lot of traffic, it seems. Don't want the background noise. Also, for all of you, if you're having some background noise, just mute yourself and feel free to unmute anytime to ask a question or make a comment. I will, from time to time, ask for your responses, but feel free to interrupt me at any time, okay? Great. All right, well, good. So some of the main things we have here is this victim triangle. I'm going to look at the victim triangle. This is where you have the victim, the persecutor or perpetrator, and then how they pull in a third party, which can be a helper, rescuer, savior, meddler, mediator, any of these roles. But what they're doing is they're trying to offload some of the tension, stress, toxicity onto somebody else. And what they're looking for from that third person is they're looking for somebody to take sides so they can justify their position and basically make the other person pay. Right? They're looking for a support to say, do you see where I am? Do you see how I suffer? Right? Whether it's the persecutor or the victim, doesn't matter which one. They both make each other feel pain, so to speak. Now, that's the triangle, and I want to zoom in on what's the dynamic just between the victim and the persecutor, and how is that codependent? How does it? Each role makes the other exist. Each role justifies the other, all right? Then I also want to zoom in on just the victim role and how it has its own polarity, moving from powerlessness to false empowerment and back and forth. And that looks like the victimized victim and then the rebel, the bruised rebel, you could call it. So it's moving between a victim and a rebel. So something passive and something active, okay? And these all work together, right? And then finally, why is it here in the first place? What is the whole drama about, okay? Why have these victim dramas? And there's really two main things that we're looking at, which is, again, which every polarity is concerned with, is control, which has to do with power, and validation, which has to do with being worthy or belonging or feeling loved, or it basically boils down to feeling like you exist. When I'm validated, I exist. When I have power and control, I have security and stability, all right? Both, when we feel we don't have power or don't have validation, both are run by fear. So fear runs all of it. And where does the fear come from? A very innate, deep feeling of disconnection. It's a disconnection to our own source, our own resilience, our own permanence. And this is what I'm calling essence. It's the realm where you are timeless, you are permanent, you are all potential, all being. It's full capability, all right? It's the realm beyond ego or personality. But you have a personality and you have an ego, and if that gets unplugged, if it forgets the source, it's trying to plug itself in somewhere else. And so it's going to start feeding off of other sources, or like taking other sources. This is the vampire nature of the ego or personality. It's trying to plug into some source so it could pick you, either by dominating you and taking your power, or submitting to you and sucking your power and wisdom, okay? How are you guys following this so far? Okay. So all of this ends up then coming down to two things. If the dramas are about control and validation, then the main antidote or remedy is resilience and autonomy. Resilience meaning the ability to bounce back, all right? To be adaptable, flexible. Crush me, destroy me, fold me in half, but I will bounce back to my basic shape and form. I can rebuild. I have the ability to rebuild. That is driven from the spark of life, my basic vitality. When I'm connected to source, I'm then connected to resilience, and that brings me creativity and resources, okay? So some of you are CTI trained, Coaches Training Institute. One of their cornerstones is the client is naturally creative, resourceful, and whole. EED takes it a couple levels deeper to say, well, how do you access that creativity and resources? How do you get to a feeling of wholeness? Because otherwise it just remains an idea. So this is why we take it down to the level of resilience and also to source or essence, okay? From the essence, then comes the resilience, then comes the creativity and resources, okay? What do I mean by autonomy is I am my own authority. I am existence. I don't need your validation. I don't need your permission. Do you understand? I rule myself. So I govern myself. I'm not depending on someone else to give me power or allow me to have power, okay? When we are not autonomous, we are dependent on some master. It's like a slavery mindset, all right? We are imprisoned. When we have full autonomy, we have full freedom over ourselves, freedom of choice. Does that make sense, what I mean by autonomy? So when we lack autonomy, we're seeking validation. We also are seeking power and authority. When we lack resilience, we are seeking control. And that also means power. So are you guys understanding there are two forms of power? There's the power to exist and the power to control everything around us, which affects our existence. So let me know if I just went a little bit too deep and philosophical for you. Are there any questions so far on this? Seems okay so far. So when, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, Troy, can you just repeat that last little bit about autonomy, just a little bit more there?
So autonomy, yeah, when I'm autonomous, it basically means I am my own God. I am in control of myself. I am the divine creator of my own world, basically, okay? When we are not autonomous, we're looking for a higher power, okay? To either give us validation, allow us to exist, or to give us wisdom or tell us what to do. We can pretend like, we are autonomous, but as soon as we start thinking we have to submit or thinking we have to dominate, we no longer possess our autonomy because we're feeling out of control when we're not autonomous. So we're looking for that authority and security. So the easy way to think of autonomy is I have sovereignty over myself, and I can be freely generous with everything around me because I know that I'm not losing any power or existence when I'm in relationship with things. Autonomy does not mean that I have to hold on desperately to my power and not give it away because, God forbid I lose any of it, I stop governing myself. No, this is the exact opposite. I'm so connected, so full of life and authority that fine, try to dominate me. You can control me, you can do everything, but you actually still aren't in control of me. Like, a great question to discover your own autonomy is, what is something you can never take away? You can ask this to yourself. What's something nobody can ever take away from me? When you're connected with that thing or aspect and you distill it down to its purest quality, you realize this is a part of my permanent, timeless being. Therefore, nobody can own that, okay? It's who I am. And even I don't own it. It just is. Okay.
Great. Thank you.
Does that work for you?
Yeah, that's helpful.
Okay.
I thought it was also on the lacking that it's this the polarity between having to submit or having to be in control.
Yes.
Versus just being.
It's just being. So you could think of it that what we're leading people towards is resilient, autonomous being.
Great.
Okay.
Thank
And
you.
a great image for resilience is the phoenix rising from the ashes. It's that ability to rise. So everything can get destroyed around me. Everything can get taken away around me and from me. I still have the ability to rebuild. Okay?
Thank you. That's
All
great.
right. I'll return to that a little bit later, the resilience and the autonomy. So let me talk about then, how do we behave when we're coming from disconnection, emptiness, okay? This is what drives a polarity, okay? Do you guys understand what a polarity is? It's a set of opposites that work together. And what they're trying to do is express a full spectrum of experience, okay? So let's take two opposites like hot and cold. They're trying to express the full spectrum of temperature, right? So you could take black, white, full spectrum of color, or if you want, you know, or all the shades of light and dark. Light and dark is, you know, a full spectrum of I guess light, you know, see, when you're thinking in opposites, you got to think, what's binding the two opposites together? Okay. Like say love and hate, what binds them together would be magnetism, attraction, bonding, connection, any of those things. All right. You guys following that so far? So we take 3 days and work with this in module 2 around polarities and how they function. I'm going to explain though what I call pathetic selves. These are the personalities or the egos that are disconnected from essence. They are trying to imitate essence. Okay. There's 4 main behaviors that they have when they are, let's say, threatened by emptiness, threatened by that disconnect or that fear. And what I'm going to say is, this is what's running the victim, okay? So let's say you got a hot spot. Let's make it red. When the pathetic self or the person is in close contact with this red spot, this is the pain point. This is the very thing they fear. This is where they will, if they come into contact with this red spot, they're not going to exist anymore. They're out of control. The first reaction is to run. They're running away from red and they're running towards safety, okay? So let's call the safe place green, okay? They're on a polarity that moves between red and green. Red is the fear and the emptiness. Green is the safety and completeness, okay? We are hardwired as animals, basically, to run from danger to safety, all right? This is our animal nature. All saboteurs, pathetic selves, this is what they're doing. They are only running in one direction, away from red towards green, okay? But life sometimes does not let them reach green. It pushes them, it prevents them from getting to the green place, okay? Or it takes the green away. What happens then is they start to cling. They cling to that safety. They cling very, very, very hard. And they will even overcompensate or overbehave that they'll pretend they have that green with them. They'll cover up, you know, any fault in themselves to say, no, I really am strong. If they're clinging to strength, they'll over insist, I am strong, because they don't want to go into the place of weakness, if that was red. Okay? If you push them close enough to the red, they'll start fighting you. They will fight back because they're fighting not to enter danger. They will fight against danger. Okay? So these 4 behaviors are flee from danger, seek safety, cling to safety, fight against danger. This is your reptilian brain. Okay? We went through this before in the other one of the other calls. This is the main focus of module 2. Now, you could say these are the 4 behaviors of a victim. All right? A victim will flee. If they can flee, they will. Now, and a victim will be stubborn. They will cling to something, meaning they will not move. They will be stubborn. These are the 2 main behaviors of the victim when they feel victimized, all right? You have the passive victim, which just flees, and you've got the active victim, which clings. Why I'm saying fleeing is passive, it's because it's avoidance. They're avoiding confrontation. The way a victim will confront is by clinging. They'll just be stubborn and they won't move. Another thing a victim will do is they'll disappear. They'll pretend something is not happening. They will go into denial. They will numb out. That is another way of fleeing, all right? So when I'm talking about this rebel victim personality polarity, okay? When a person is fleeing or numbing out or denying, they're being the passive victim. When they start clinging, being stubborn, I will not move. No. That's being an active victim. Now, on the flip side, they also then can become a rebel. All right. This is when they'll start to fight back. They'll fight against. Okay. It's easy to move from stubbornness into fighting. All right. So they'll fight against. That's where they are most active. They're an active rebel fighting against the danger, but they'll only do it for so long. Otherwise, if the fighting doesn't work and they're still a rebel, they escape, they take off. The basic thing is, I'm done with you, screw you, I'm going somewhere else. It's as if they give up, right? I'm done with you, I've got something better to do. That is the passive side of the rebel, where it seeks out something to escape to. How are you guys doing with this? Mm-hmm. Okay. So an example is, I'm being victimized, so I'll just not feel it. This is me fleeing. Or I literally will run. And then when I get enough distance, I could say, fuck you. That's me being the rebel, escaping, okay? But then you can come after me and start to insult me, take away my strengths, everything, and I'll say, no, I'm going to be stubborn. And then if I'm under enough pressure, I will fight back. But then I'll run as soon as I can. So the flee and the cling is a victim. The escape and fight is a rebel. Does that trigger anything for you guys? Remind you of anything? Is there anything you agree or disagree with here? Just on these 4 behaviors of the rebel victim.
Troy, maybe on a short dialogue you could illustrate, because I know that the module practical, it will cover also the practical stuff and
okay,
let's so-called role play, but maybe we can make a short.
Okay, well, let's make a quick dialogue. Let's put it in a business context. You've got a manager and an employee. Okay? Yeah. The employee is in a victim mentality. Okay, they feel less power than the manager. Okay, it doesn't matter if the manager really is victimizing the person or not. But the employee has decided they are a victim. They're in a victim mentality, so they have to make the manager the persecutor, okay? This is, we talk about this also in, if I'm in a victim role, I need a persecutor, and I'll go as far as to create my persecutor so I can hold on to my identity as victim, all right?
Mm-hmm.
All right? So we've got a manager and an employee. So the manager is training the employee, saying, this is how you do this, this is how you do this, this is how you do this. And the victim is in, let's say, a very passive mode. They're in flee. So all they're going to do is say, agree, agree. Okay, so they don't create any trouble, so nothing happens. Okay, so it's very, very smooth. They're avoiding all danger with this manager. Okay, they don't want to disrupt. Mm-hmm. Inside, they might be thinking, well, this isn't fair, or I don't like that rule or this rule, but they won't say anything, okay? Because they're in flee mode, okay? So let's say they do the work, and then the manager comes and says, all right, I have some feedback for you, right? I need you to do this again. I need you to go talk to this person. I need a clear answer on this. Now, they could turn into a rebel and start fighting the boss and say, yeah, but I did that. And I did ask, what are you expecting? You're too demanding on me. Do you understand? You're victimizing me, okay? Mm-hmm. Or I don't like these rules. These rules shouldn't even be there. That's not fair, all right? That's fighting. They're fighting either the manager or they're fighting the system. Mm-hmm. If they want to go into the more active victim where they start being stubborn and they cling, they say, yeah, well, I tried really, really hard. Why don't you acknowledge my good work? You're just, again, being either too demanding, too picky, but I won't do it again. I stand up for my right as a person, as a human being, and I stand behind the quality of my work. That's being stubborn, okay? They're unwilling to budge or listen, okay? The other thing they could say is, yeah, well, screw your rules and screw you and your feedback. I quit. I'm out of here. That's the rebel doing the escape, okay? Or they could just flee some more and they could say, okay. Yes, whatever you say, and I'll do it, but they'll do it with resentment, but they still won't say anything. That's a way to flee, okay? Does that help you with the four kinds of, just examples, right?
Yeah, it's a good illustrator.
Now, what you've got to watch, this is important for mediators and coaches, is when somebody starts moving into the rebel side, sometimes we say, good for you. Yeah, fuck that boss, he's not fair. Or, yeah, you fight the system. What we might be doing is still feeding the victim mentality here. It's just showing up like a rebel. When it's a rebel without a cause, it's a victim. Because it's more about getting the validation, getting the fairness. Treat me fairly. They don't care about you. Treat me fairly, okay? Now, you may not like what I'm saying here, but this is what it does boil down to, okay? When they are not resilient and they're fighting, they're just fighting the fight, and it can become narcissistic, meaning they really need this validation. So the validation becomes more important than the fight or the cause. They might say, this is what it's because, but they won't, if they start clinging to it and won't let it go, and they have no humility, all right? They're really in a cling mode, and when they have no humility. For example, I could be rightly persecuting you and abusing you, and then I could come to you and say, look, I've come to my senses. What I've done is wrong. I'm very sorry, okay? Let's even say it's the manager-employee. The manager got impatient with the employee. Doesn't matter whose fault it was for, but the manager got angry, okay? And scared the employee. You come back to the employee and they say, I'm really, really, really sorry. I'm sorry. That was wrong what I did. I should not have ever done that. Is there anything I can do to make up for it. I also promise that will never happen again, blah, blah, blah. Now, the victim can go into a stubborn mode and say, well, thank you for your apology, but I can never trust you. What you said was wrong, and I'm not letting that go. They're still clinging to their victimhood. And I'll speak briefly on what this is about, because this has to do with the victim-persecutor cycle. The clinging can also mean they will not forgive. Mm-hmm. Okay? And that becomes a real problem. Because when a victim cannot forgive, they start becoming a persecutor. There's a background noise. I don't know where it's coming from. Oh, it might be from Alina. Alina, I'll just mute you to test things. Yeah, there's a little background static with your connection, Alina. So if you ever want to speak, just unmute, okay? I'm going to tell you why it is easier for a persecutor to forgive than it is for a victim, okay? So if you think of a full circle that goes all the way around so you can experience the full spectrum of what the victim-persecutor polarity is, okay? Imagine that we all start as innocent, completely innocent, all right? Then we move into life, and something happens to us, okay? It could be a slap on the wrist. It could be somebody shook the crib and destabilized us, but we are vulnerable, okay, when we come into life. We are naive, innocent, and vulnerable. That's, in a way, pure essence, okay? But we have to deal with the world, and the world sometimes gives us hard knocks. So anytime anyone says no or gives us a punishment, it could be for very, very, very good, sound reasons, but we, when we experience it, will say, I have been victimized. So we start the cycle from victim, meaning a victim has lost all power. They are in a powerless place, okay? And in that powerless place, the only thing they can hold on to is a sense of worthiness. So if they can't get power, what they'll try to get is validation, okay? Please validate me. Do you see how I'm victimized? Do you see how wrong that is? If you agree with me, now I have some validation. At least I've got a sense of self. I may not have power to change the situation, but at least I have some compassion and empathy from somebody. That makes me feel valid. Does that make sense to you guys? Okay? A victim uses validation to get a false sense of power. Okay? Now, as we go through life, and we've been victimized and victimized and victimized, but we learn, and if we start daring to take some risks, we will eventually get into a place where we'll grab our power, and we might run with our power, okay, and say, I've broken free, I'm free of my persecutor, okay? Now I have all my power back, okay? But there's a switch that happens. Now that you've broken free, you've escaped the prison, what do you do about the person that kept you in the prison? Now that you've broken free from the master, when you have all the power now for yourself, what do you do with the master? I'm going to leave that question to you. Just what are your ideas here?
So this is the dynamics switching between victim and persecutor?
Persecutor, yeah. So the victim on the very one end of being pure victim is zero power, okay? The more emancipated the victim becomes, the more power they can gain, okay? Meaning the more free the victim becomes, the more free from my terrible circumstances, okay, the more I break free, the more power I have. Okay? Now, when I have all that power, what do I do about all the things that made me suffer? What are my choices here? You've abused me for 10 years. I've finally broken free. Now, what do I do? What do I do about you? Because you're still going to live in my mind as a memory. I might run into you on the street. I still might even live with you. I don't know. But if I've broken free from your power over me, I still have to be in relationship with you.
So I guess some people would offer forgiveness. Some other would offer indifference, saying this doesn't affect me anymore. Mm-hmm. You're nothing to me. And maybe some other people would turn into themselves into a persecutor and start harassing the person that has them before, just to show them that now they also have power, and hopefully for them more power than their former persecutor.
Yes. That's basically what will happen is, one, if you give the victim all the power, they won't know how to use it, because they still don't believe. If they still believe they're a victim, they won't know what to do with the power. Number two, a victim is living with a belief that if you have power, you lose your heart, because in order to exercise power, it's heartless. Do you understand? And if the victim is clinging to validation, they have to exchange their heart for power. They can't have both. They don't know how to reconcile that. Okay? Number three, as soon as I break away from my abuser, I would like them to suffer as much as I suffered. That is a natural reaction. You made me suffer. Now you need to pay. And it's in the name of justice. Does that make sense?
But isn't this a role comparing my persecutor with your persecutor?
It can. I mean, this is all roles, okay? But what we're looking at is, when does the role flip from victim to persecutor? Because what I'm saying, it's all the same. All right? The persecutor came from victim. They are moving halfway around the circle. If you start at victim, now as soon as they become persecutor, that's halfway around the circle. They're on the opposite end. In order for them to be a persecutor, they need another victim. So in order for me to be a persecutor, I have to victimize. So when I switch from victim to persecutor, I am creating a new victim. Okay? Then I can live my time as the persecutor, and eventually I let that role go. And when I let all of that go, I'm coming back around to being a victim again. So I'm a victim who's gaining power, who then becomes a persecutor, who starts losing power. If we're looking on the power cycle. In order for me to be a victim, I need a persecutor. In order for me to be powerless, I need somebody to be powerful over me or take it away. In order for me to be a persecutor so I can exercise my power, I need a victim so I can put my power on them or take away all their power so I can gain more power. You guys understand what I'm saying? They need each other, but they're actually both driven from fear and emptiness. And in a sense, it's all victim.
So basically, if I have a client who seems to me to be in a persecutor mode, I have to find and search for the victimhood, which is the basic ground zero for beginning the circle.
They're halfway around. They've come out of victimhood. There's a reason they're persecuting. I'll tell you. Here's the logical reason why we don't start as persecutors. One, like I said, we start as innocent, naive. Also, life is generally life is benevolent. There is no such thing as pure evil. Being a born evil destroyer. It just doesn't happen. It's really so rare to exist. It's so anti-life. Do you guys understand? But if I'm coming from, I want to fight against the injustice of life, now I'm going to be a persecutor. Okay? But I'm coming from that pure, innocent place. Now, I, as a persecutor, may have forgotten that whole part of myself, all right? Also, the thing with persecutors is, if they open their heart, they will feel weakened. They feel like they lose power when they make connection, all right? What I'm saying is the way polarities work is you can't have power and validation at the same time. They're on two opposite ends. So the one strength of a victim is they can have incredible empathy and compassion and be able to connect, all right? There is no power. They're powerless, so they rely on the validation. A persecutor can become all-powerful, and they can accomplish amazing things, and they can make amazing decisions that nobody could make. They can make the real tough calls, like firing a very valuable employee, okay? But it's because they can turn off their need for validation. I'm totally validated. I'm totally validated in myself. I don't need your approval or anything, and that's why I can fire you and have no problem with it. Do you understand? To be a persecutor demands that I'm not so connected to my sense of validation. I don't need your validation. You guys following what I'm saying? Okay? It's not psychopathic to be a persecutor, but we completely forget our connection to humanity. Yeah, that's psychopathy. Okay? I just want to pause there, see what your thoughts are here. If you guys just join in here, tell me what you're thinking so far. There's a lot to be said around here. And I haven't even gone to the triangle yet. This is just how the victim and persecutor are enmeshed and entangled with each other.
I have a scenario for you. Very simple. So you're at work and your boss keeps giving you too much work. And then one of your colleagues just come to ask you a very small thing to do. And you've said yes to too much work from your employer because well, he's basically the persecutor in this, and you feel that you can't say no. And then your colleague comes with a very small thing, and then you unleash everything on him or her. And then in that case, to me, it seems like a mix of everything, because then you're not just a victim fleeing your employer, but you're also a rebel, because you're rebelling, but not against your employer, but against the other one. Yeah. And at the same time, you're also becoming a persecutor yourself.
That's right.
Yes. So then you're, so then in this scenario, you're at the same time victim and persecutor, and you're also fleeing and rebelling at the same time.
Yes, exactly. So when we talk about the circle, if you think of it like a clock, all right? Think of it like down at 6 o'clock, there's zero power. That's the victim. Then you're going to climb from 6 o'clock to 9 o'clock, and when you hit midnight, there's the persecutor, all powerful, okay? But we live somewhere in between. We live maybe around 9 o'clock. Sometimes we're a victim, sometimes we persecute. So in the case of the boss, the majority of the time, I'm feeling victimized by my boss, the workload, and probably I never get a thank you, okay? It's just one demand after another, and I get very little reward, all right? Then that other person that comes to me says, can you do me this little favor? And I snap and I go, no, and you're always so, and I just kind of go in overdrive, overboard, right? I'm balancing the scales. I've been so much in this position of victim. I'm just craving for the moment where I could just get a little revenge and offload. I'm going to pick the weaker person to do that with. Okay? Just come and live in France. They do this all the time. Because most of the time they're living in this low self-esteem of I am powerless, and as soon as I get the opportunity I'm going to lash out and rebel, okay? So if you walk up to them and they sense that you're more wounded than them, they're going to rub salt into it. And I'm not saying France is the only one. We all do this, but I especially noticed this when I first moved to France. So I had to make sure I cleaned out all my wounds if I didn't want to have conflicts. So yeah, feeling oppressed by the boss, and then at any moment they're going to have a backlash. This happens with somebody who's feeling oppressed at work, and then they come home and they start abusing their family, right? Because they're looking for the outlet to balance the scales, all right? So what I'm saying is when we hit midnight, okay, and the victim is suddenly handed the platter of power, they have a choice. They can either accept the power or they can say, no thanks, I won't take it, but they're not moving backwards into victim. What they're doing is they're saying, here is an exit point. I can get off the cycle. So I've lived half a cycle where I've been under somebody else's power, and when I'm given the power, I will choose not to have power over others, and I will choose to just get off the power game. That's called forgiveness. When I choose to forgive, meaning turn the other cheek, okay, it's the exact opposite of an eye for an eye. You take my eye, and I naturally want to take your eye to even out the scales, okay? But if I forgive you for taking my eye, I have no desire to do anything about your eyes, and I'm totally fine with one eye. I know you've got two and I've got one, but I'm totally okay with that. That is what forgiveness is. Do you understand? So for a victim to forgive, it feels like they've been ripped off because they don't get the retaliation. They're giving that up. They're giving up half their cycle. Does this make sense? It's easy for a persecutor to ask for forgiveness and forgive because they've lived the full cycle. There's a wholeness to that. They've experienced powerlessness, then they've experienced being powerful, then they're realizing, I don't want that power anymore. It's easy for them to return to powerlessness and get off the game. Does that make sense? So it's forgiveness is very, very, very demanding on a victim. This is why when you're doing mediation work, if you give spotlight to the victim and show them how much they've suffered, that's very easy. And when they start pointing the finger at the persecutor and saying, that's a bad person, and you can get sucked into punishing the persecutor, that's very easy. And the persecutor will take the punishment quite first. They'll be able to take it. They've experienced that before. But now, if you start saying to the victim, now you're being unreasonable, you're starting to cling, be stubborn, you're fighting back, but you're not taking responsibility for those fights, because a victim can start spitting out contempt out of one side of their mouth and then playing the innocent victim on the other. They're having these little unconscious persecutor moments, right? They won't admit to it because they'll say, I never do that. There's no way. I'm not a mean person, right? If you ask them to take responsibility for how they have contributed to the problem, they won't go there. They'll say, it wasn't me. I was put in this situation. I never chose this. Do you understand? So one thing you cannot do in mediation is ask somebody quickly, how have you been contributing to the problem? The victim will say, I've never contributed. The persecutor will say, okay, perhaps I did this and that. The persecutor will admit to contribution first over a victim. And when you've got a victim clinging to their validation, they're not just clinging to being innocent, they're clinging to a whole identity of, if I admit I contributed to this problem, I'm also admitting I'm no longer a victim of this. Suddenly, I have to admit I'm a possible persecutor, and I don't want to be a possible persecutor because I think that's a hateful person. Do you understand how hard that is for a victim to move? So there's a reason why they start clinging. A trick I'm teaching in EED is Let them cling, 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 cling until they get so exhausted they have to let go. They start developing compassion for the other side. You start slowly introducing their sense of being a persecutor, build their resilience where they're okay with that, and then they start building some humility where they can forgive. If they can get a taste, I sort of like vent a little bit of that revenge, or get a taste of the persecutor, that the persecutor feels right in what they're doing, and they can see themselves from the other side, from the persecutor's eyes, they start to develop some humility, okay? I mean, really what I think is they're both victims and persecutors at the same time. By me being more and more of a victim, I'm actually persecuting you because I'm not letting you off the power game. I'm telling you you have to keep abusing your power, you know, in order for me to feel like an abused victim. Do you understand? Neither of them are letting them off the power game. How is this for you guys? Because this gets into racy territory where people will say, no, there's no possible way. The clinging victim will show up. And if you feel that in yourself, notice that. Because, I mean, this is not easy stuff to deal with.
But the savior gets into the scene in this moment.
Okay. If you're mediating or coaching, when the victim feels cornered, they will flee, or they might start escaping and seeking a savior or a rescuer. They can flee to the savior or escape to the savior. They can cling to the savior and fight the enemy, all right? So, for example, you're mediating husband and wife, and either the husband or wife, they could say, do you see what she does to me? Or do you see what he's doing to me? You see when he says that? They're turning away from engaging with their partner, and they're looking to you to validate their position, validate their suffering, validate their full justification of being right. Because the persecutor could turn to you and say, do you see how weak he is? Do you see he deserves a slap in the face? He deserves to be pushed around because he's not going to do anything otherwise. And it's so hard to carry all the responsibility of the household when he keeps avoiding paying the bills and he keeps feeling like, and he doesn't go out and get a job. And I have to nag, 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 nag. And he says I'm mean. Well, I have a right to be mean when we don't make money. You see, I'm building a case. Do you get it? So I'm sucking you into my side to say, look how right I am. The more I suck you into my side, the further away I move from my own humility or my own contribution to the problem. If I can defend myself and you agree that I'm right, then I can say, he's wrong. He's the cause of the problem. I'm clean. I have nothing to do with this. This is now me being a victim of the circumstance. I'm the blameless victim. Do you guys hear how this works? So if you start getting pulled in as the savior, the fixer, the guru, you're helping create more of a victim in that person. It doesn't matter if they appear to be the sufferer or the persecutor. It doesn't matter. They're weakening themselves. They're using you to avoid their own responsibility and resilience and autonomy. Okay.
So how the mediator can, not being connect, so not being dragged into it.
Yeah.
And revealing what is to the other two, what is happening there.
Yeah. One thing that can happen. So number one, the facilitator is coming from all acceptance, first of all, and modeling all acceptance, okay? It's okay for the victim to suffer. It is okay for the persecutor to abuse. It is okay for the victim to feel the punishment. It is okay for the punisher to punish. When you're speaking to their side, they are right in what they do, okay? So, and when you say, yep, that's natural, all right? But what you're not doing is taking sides, and you're not creating competition. What you're doing is, as soon as you say, okay, fine, so you punish, look at the effect over there and ask the other side, how does it feel to be punished? I feel hurt. Punisher. That person says they feel hurt. How does that affect you? You start getting cross dialogue, okay? Yes, but I feel right to punish. Okay, fine. Victim, they feel right to punish you. Yeah, but that's not fair. It still hurts me. Punisher, do you hear that they're hurt? Yeah, well, they don't look hurt. Look again, okay? So when we're doing EED facilitation of conflicts, we're creating the cross dialogue, but we are making sure that it actually lands and gets through. And there's ways that we do that. But at the same time, if it's not getting through, we allow them to have the friction. But we want them to notice how they're battling each other, okay? Because that's a game that they're playing. And as soon as they accept their role, they can start to relax. So here's a phenomenon. I'm not really persecuting this person. They're victimizing me. I'm not really the victim here because this really isn't happening to me. It wasn't my choice in the first place. You see, they're both in denial of their roles, okay? As soon as we can get them to say, but you are being dominated, or you are dominating, you know, and they'll have a judgment on themselves with that. But if we can drop them into some resilience where they can say, okay, fine, in this moment, I am the dominator. They are the submitter, or I am the persecutor, or I am the victim. It relaxes them if we can drop them into resilience and they say, yes, I'm the victim and I'm still here. I am still okay. I don't like it, but I'm still here. That's a beginning of an acceptance of the situation. It starts to calm things down where they can now start to see and listen. There's other techniques where we can aggravate or neutralize. But eventually what happens is when you build enough resilience in the person, both parties, they start to naturally swap roles. They now can let go of their position and they can go visit the other side. And they can go, and then they can start feeling the righteousness of the other position. And when they start having a free movement between both positions, they can start to look into themselves. And the phenomenon that happens when we're doing conflict reconciliation is we're just using each other to work out our own internal dramas. I'm using you to be my persecutor. I'm using you to be my victim. But really, I'm victimizing myself. I'm persecuting myself. That's eventually where we end up going. So that every conflict is a projection of something internal going on in me. So when we start moving into forgiveness, if I can release the prisoner, okay, we're always holding somebody prisoner. If I can release the prisoner and then forgive myself for holding the prisoner and for being the prisoner, when I can forgive both sides, I have no need to hold something over the other person. But that's very, 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 very difficult to achieve because it takes a lot of resilience and it takes a reconnection with our own autonomy. Where are you guys now with this information? Because I can't use this call to say, here's the solution, okay? But I can use this call to say, here's what you can be aware of. And so I think for the part of the remainder of the call is I want to look at what are some remedies, what are some traps to watch out for, okay? But so what's coming to you? How are you absorbing this information? Where does this take you now?
Well, I'm much more aware about the position that I go through as a coach, and I still need to practice the shift that happens in the same person when he goes through all the three dimensions, because also a victim, I think it tends to reach a savior position sometimes. So
yes,
not me as a coach should be the savior, but I think it's in his constitution to reach someday the position of the savior.
Yes, let's look at savior and bully, okay? They're kind of the same thing because they both have a relationship to suffering and weakness. Mm-hmm. So if I've been a victim, I've been victimized, I've suffered, I've felt pain, and I can get out of it enough, you know, where I can feel, okay, now I'm okay. But I'm going to have a lot of compassion and empathy for others who have been unjustly treated, right? If you make somebody suffer, I'm going to side with the victim. I don't want them to suffer. If somebody comes to me and says, look how much I suffer, I'd like to save them the pain. Why? I have a lot of compassion and empathy. I wouldn't want to have somebody experience the amount of pain I did, okay? So I'm naturally going to move towards a rescuer or a savior. Now, what you're actually doing is you're cutting off their ability to move out of the cycle themselves. They need to experience this so they can come out of it themselves. That's one thing. Number two, the rescuer is feeding their own sense of narcissism. Meaning, I've suffered, I can withstand the pain, you cannot. I want to save you the pain because I am stronger. Now you're raising your status and making them actually weaker. If the savior can say, look, please have your pain, I'm here with you, but experience your pain, okay? That's partly how you neutralize the dynamic. If you get sucked into being a savior, they're going to ask you to take away their pain because they don't want to accept their pain. If you move them into a resilient enough place where they can accept their pain, they'll actually move away from the pain naturally. The more they resist the pain, the more the pain is going to chase them. The bully is similar. The bully will say, I need to protect weakness, and I will use force in order to protect the weak. Therefore, I'll beat everybody up and protect the underdog. Also, if I see weakness in you, and you remind me of any kind of weakness I have in myself, I'll beat you up because I'm going to beat that weakness out of you. I'm going to say, toughen up, guy. I'll want to abuse you so I can remove my own sense of weakness and assert my power. And hopefully, you know, maybe you'll stand up for yourself, okay? That's why I'm bullying. You understand? Mm-hmm. In a way, bullying is trying to save the person as well. That sounds very, very, very weird.
It's like a father with the little boy who gets beaten in a school, yeah, and then gets beaten again by his father because he was weak.
Right. You were weak and you make me feel ashamed. You're making me feel weak. I can't feel weak. Therefore, I have to prove my power and I want to grow you up. So I'm going to beat the hell out of you. So hopefully you fight back. Right? Do you understand? So where the persecutor or the bully is not going is they will not open the heart. You need to exercise resilience first with a bully or a persecutor. You need to build resilience with them first. That enables them. See, when they realize, okay, if I open my heart a little, and my world doesn't crumble, meaning I can always rebuild my world no matter how much I crumble, then I can afford to open my heart, because they feel if they open their heart, that's weakness and all their power drains away. Okay. To the victim, they say, well, I don't have any power. All I've got is my heart. So if they take on power, they're now in conflict with themselves, because they believe that to have power means to be heartless. They're sacrificing their heart for power. And believe you me, Hollywood promotes that myth. Any movie you see where the person gains success, they become all famous, suddenly they're losing their friends, they're losing their family, and by the end of the movie they say, oh, all that power wasn't worth it. I gave it up, and now I have my family and my friends back. They're giving you the message, don't try to climb power. You're going to lose your heart. You understand? Or go ahead and get power. It's just you're going to live a very sad and sorry life. You're very lonely. This is the myth we have about those elites. Why? Because we feel like victims. It's like, wow, they must have no love in their life. And probably maybe they don't, because they don't want to lose their empire. Do you understand how we can make up stories about each other? There's a reason I'm going to stay a victim, because I don't want to lose my heart. I don't want to lose my humanity. Or there's a reason I'm going to stay a persecutor, because I don't want to be a blubbering mess. I want power, control, and security. Do you guys understand? It's like you can't have one or the other. You can't have both. When you build resilience, there's less need for power and control, because for everything that gets destroyed, you know you can withstand it and rebuild it. When you build autonomy for yourself, meaning you don't need others to validate you, you can freely give from your heart and take back into your heart with unconditionally. It doesn't affect your existence. Okay? It doesn't kill me if people hate me, because I'm autonomous. It doesn't kill me if people love me, because I don't need to move into dependency. Like, I don't need to win your love by giving you something to get something back. I'm not autonomous if I'm in dependency, okay? So build autonomy in the victim, where they loosen their grip on validation. Now it's okay for them to accept some power, and they won't need to exact so much revenge. Build resilience in the persecutor, so they feel secure in themselves. Then they can start building their own autonomy, meaning some generosity of giving and receiving love and connection. Then they won't depend on power to make them feel like they're okay. Like, they can also feel okay with no power. They can feel okay with simply giving and receiving love. If this is making sense to you guys, tell me if it is or isn't. I know what I mean. When you build resilience in the persecutor, then they will accept their weakness. Weakness doesn't feel weak anymore. It doesn't mean that they're going to lose their power, meaning then they're separating, or they're not. What they've got collapsed together is humanity can equal weakness. If I give, I could get destroyed. If I love, I could be taken advantage of. Okay? When they realize they're resilient, they'll give and receive love more freely. Then they don't become so dependent on power. Then they can start working on their own autonomy, meaning they have more generosity. Okay. What are you guys pulling together for yourselves what's fascinating, what still feels like a question that you want to take with you. Because we're coming towards the end here. This is a huge topic. There's so much to cover. I told you can't cover it in 90 minutes.
Hi, Troy. It's Cheryl. It's
Yes.
It's a huge topic and fascinating. I feel like I'm going to need time to think about it and process it. But I just had one question about, you talked about building autonomy and loosening the grip on validation.
Yeah.
I think if I'm understanding you correctly, what you're meaning by that is losing the grip on the need for validation.
That's right. The need for it.
Right. Okay. So I feel like I have a clearer picture on what you were saying about building resistance in the persecutor. I would love maybe just one more sentence on building autonomy in
The victim.
In the victim, helping to loosen the grip of the need for validation.
Yeah. So the victim is always is addicted to or needs validation. Do I exist? Please tell me I exist. Am I okay? Please tell me I'm okay. Please, am I here? Please tell me I'm here. So it wants connection. It wants love. It wants to feel like it is here. It's also sometimes why victims will take abuse, because it's the only stimulation you get. They equate that with validation. Do you understand?
Right.
If you beat me, at least that's a connection, right?
Right.
When you can, and when you can work with them, say, all right, what if we cut the need? What's it like if, you could say, am I really failing here? And I can say, what do you say about that? Right? You're going to still want my approval, or am I right? And if I don't give it to you, and I say, what's it like to not receive any confirmation? They're going to freak out. They're going to say, oh, I don't know. What do you find in yourself, right? If you let them go through the free fall, they'll find something.
Bring it back to them.
And then they got to bring it back to themselves, okay? Because what they're constantly doing is they're externalizing.
Right?
It's like a classic example could be like, hey, where should we go eat for dinner tonight? I'm kind of hungry. And you could say, let's have Chinese. And I go, yeah, I don't know if I was thinking Chinese. You say, well, we could have pizza. Yeah, I don't know about pizza. And then you could say to me, well, tell me what you think. Well, I don't know what I want. I just, wherever you want to go. Yeah. Right? And then I'm actually going to design you to victimize me, because I'll say, oh, no, you're so mean and impatient. I thought we were going to go out for a nice dinner and all you're doing is hollering at me. Right? So, oh, eat wherever you want. I cook all day. I can't even get one day where I get a break. You can't surprise me. That's all victim and dependency and validation, because what I'm refusing to do is make a decision without needing approval around the decision. Okay, so the decision isn't important. It's the approval of it. Do you understand?
Right. Okay.
And it's much easier for me to make you read my mind than for me to speak my mind. Because what if I'm wrong? For me, it's like suddenly I don't exist. Did you get it?
Yeah, I think so. It's so interesting to think about, like, all the different people and places it plays out, both personally and professionally, right?
Yes. Anything about passing the buck, not being accountable, not being accountable to themselves, a lot of it has to do with, I wouldn't call it self-worth. It is about, I don't know if I can handle owning my own thoughts. If I can handle being the creator of my own world. I don't know if I can handle that. It's way easier to say somebody else created this for me and I just happened to be put here. Right? That's why it's very difficult for the victim to move to the creator, because suddenly the creator is autonomous. I am my creation. That's what we mean by autonomy. I am what I am. No apology, no fear.
Try.
Yeah. Thank you.
I have a
question. Cheryl? Yeah.
I said fascinating.
Yeah, it is fascinating. Yeah. Philippe? Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. I have a question. Maybe it's connected to that. So I've had an example of someone who is a woman who is in a relationship with a guy, and the guy is very, very dominant, and the girl actually is taking really pleasure from that. So she's incredibly passive. The guy is also a bit abusive, but she accepts that because basically what I found out is she's fascinated by power, but she seems to truly believe that she is incapable of power. So she's accepting power from her boyfriend. So she's accepting power even when it is abusive. So I was wondering how you would, what you would bring to that to maybe at least maybe help a person like that get out of at least the abusive part.
Okay. I mean, these can be all longer conversations, and I can't just say, here's what you do, step 1, 2, 3. Okay.
Sure.
These are not easy to untangle from. Yeah, by the way, Cheryl said she had to go. If any of you, we're at time now. If you have to go, feel free. You're not obligated to stay, but I will go a little bit longer to get this wrapped up, and then I'll stop the recording. And then if still you have a couple more questions, I'm fine to hang out. What's key in what you said is she's taking pleasure in her role. Okay? So what's happening is, again, if she's in the victim position, she's receiving the abuse, whatever, okay? She's equating the stimulation of receiving the blows as a way to validate herself. Yes, I'm alive. Yes, I'm alive. Because if he totally stopped and refused, she would start chasing him to rile him up to get him to start abusing her again, okay? Yes. So again, work on the autonomy, the self-validation first with this person, okay? An example is, okay, so she's given all the power. She won't know what to do with it. She'll throw it away because she doesn't feel valid, or either that she can own it or that she deserves it. It's much easier if somebody puts this on her. She's in a much easier position to say, look how abusive he is, abuse me more. It's because she's very attached to that role, right? So we've got to loosen their attachment to the role, right? So there's issues of, I need stimulation. This person may not be appreciating themselves at all very much, right? Or they're coming from a narcissistic place, meaning I must suffer in order to feel alive and feel good. And look how much I suffer. Isn't this noble? And gain all this empathy and compassion from people, okay? But the one thing they're not doing is validating themselves, okay? So there's ways in. It's not about building self-esteem. It is about them able to own their thought, own their feeling without starting to blame it on something else. This includes happiness and sadness. He's the one that makes me sad, or he's the one that brings me joy, okay? Resilience work does this really well. As soon as you trigger the joy, you can get them sustaining it. We use this vertical loop. Then I make them realize, oh, you're the one who's sustaining this. What's it like to know that? Oh, no. It was because you asked that question. No, that question was 10 minutes ago, and you've been in this state for 10 minutes. How have you been maintaining it yourself? They don't even realize, okay, that they have been actually creating the state of pleasure for themselves, or the opposite, creating the state of pain for themselves, okay? The one thing with a victim addicted to suffering is they don't need a persecutor anymore because they can persecute themselves and not realize that they are persecuting themselves. Or if they do, that's even more complicated because they'll quickly go from, oh, I'm such a victim, is that, oh, I shouldn't be a victim, and look how terrible I am, and oh, that feels horrible. I really make myself feel horrible. All this self-punishment and criticism, right? They persecute themselves. Or the one that just won't let go of a grudge. You know, he did me wrong. His whole family did me wrong. I'm never forgiving them. I'm never going to trust them. So that family could go away, you know, and they can get new neighbors, for example. Doesn't matter. They will, if they can't let go, they're always going to get persecuted in their own mind. This person did this to me. And that person could be long gone, but now the victim is re-traumatizing themselves in their mind. That gives them a sense of self, a sense of validation. They identify through the victimization to feel valid. I exist. Does this make sense?
Yes, it does.
So build some resilience, but focus more on the ownership of their own experience. And they are creating their own experience and they own it. Nobody can take it away. And then they can start moving into some appreciation. They can start moving into some self-love, self-connection. And then they can start holding power and using power without needing to exact revenge or give it away. Does that help you?
Yes, it does. But at the same time, I was also thinking about trying to apply this to another case where I've seen a person who was in that role. And then, so to make it short, when she was with an abusive boyfriend, she was the victim and she was rebelling, but happy to be the victim because she was fascinated in her power.
Yeah.
And then when she had a new boyfriend who was very much softer, then she became the abuser because she was enjoying the abuser and persecutor because she was again fascinated by power. So the way you're presenting things is power can be a key for someone who is abused to get to independence, basically. But in this case, where she then uses power to abuse, what could help get out of using power to abuse? So
you know that we have to play out their game to really see what's going on, but there could be a couple things going on. One, still, a victim will underuse their power. Even if they're with somebody weaker, they can persecute that person. They can't persecute them enough because they think, no, really, that didn't really hurt him. That, you know, am I really that powerful? They'll overdo it, right? And is she a guilty persecutor or is she drunk with power?
What do you mean guilty persecutor?
I don't really want to abuse him, but he makes me do it. He drives me nuts. Or, oh, I hit him or I abused him, I hurt him, and now I feel so sorry, I feel so bad.
No, it's more, she's actually very, very transparent about it. She's really saying that she's fascinated by power. So she actually even says, so when she was abused by her abusive boyfriend, she was saying that she was really attracted to him because he was powerful and because he was you know, things were happening and it was exciting and she was excited by anger, by power, etc. And the other way around.
Here's a key though, when somebody says, I'm fascinated by power and this is why I get in these powerful positions, power, if they don't own it, they don't really believe they possess it. This is why they're always fascinated. They don't realize, hey, honey, you are using the power. Oh, but I'm just fascinated. How much can I hold or how much can I do? They're not believing they really own it. That's one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If they're still in a bit of denial. Like, I'm doing all these powerful things, but I'm not really that powerful. So if you get them into full ownership of their power, it can start to neutralize, right? Because otherwise they're just saying it's not enough, it's not enough. Same with being drunk with power is it's still not enough. I feel like I don't own it. I have to have more. So drunk with power, take it away and see how they still survive, right? Fascinated with power, give them all the power in the world and see how they can own it.
Yes.
It's done in the imagination, right?
And also, sorry, what comes to me also when you say that is, so she's able of both. She's able of being okay. Basically, she's able of having power if she wants to, but what she's unable to do is when she's facing someone powerful, she's not able to show her power too, and when she's facing someone who she feels is weak, then she's not able to show her weakness.
Yeah.
So maybe there's also an entry point there.
Well, both have to do with the relationship to weakness. We talk in EED about these 10 essential qualities. When you can get them in a state where they feel invincible, but at the same time they can be totally open and exposed, power is no longer an issue. And when they can start to experience what that's like, it starts then opening their heart where they can feel love and they can also receive and experience bliss. And then at that point, there's no need to have these power games. It becomes pointless for them, okay? Power games means I have to prove something to myself or to others because I'm really believing like I'm weak or I'm insecure or I'm, they can call it a million names. So it's still the relationship to lack of. They either overcompensate, that's the clinging, or they submit. You could try the other track with what's going on the heart level, on the connection level, validation level. How empathetic is she to herself or to her partners, right? And the other thing is, you might not like this answer, but sadomasochism, S&M, is one of the safest places to play out our power fantasies because it's done by design. It's not done at random, right? And there are rules, right, that need to be respected. So there again, like a lot of people actually go through therapeutic experiences when they allow themselves to experience S&M when done properly, because it exercises all these taboo. They can break all these taboos within themselves and say, actually, yes, I do contain power. Yes, I can be okay when I'm victimized. Yes, I can be okay when I persecute, and I can rebalance myself. Right, so that I don't actually need any of these. Do you understand? So what I just love to, and that's a little controversial what I say, but there's reasons why I'm coming from there. It's because it's not done at random. It is carefully designed. S&M is carefully designed when done properly.
I understand.
Yeah, and for many reasons, that's why a lot of people are attracted to it, because they can safely work out their power issues and their validation issues. It becomes a problem if they now depend on the S&M in order to get their adrenaline rush. Do you understand? And then that weakens them more. So that's not healthy, okay? It all pulls back to building resilience, building autonomy. That's what we're doing 98% of the time. And then the 2% left over is we're just neutralizing what's going on so we can reconnect them to source, resilience, and autonomy. To make EED very simple, that's what we're doing. So we only work with the 2% resistance and the 98% resilience, and that's it. So what has you, what are your last words here? And then I'll close the recording. What do you take away from this, or what's fascinating for you? Very briefly.
Well, I don't know if anyone else is still there, but for me, it's hard to say. Actually, this is complex. This is really, for me, this is really a very new perspective. It's like one piece of the world that was really missing and that really makes sense. So it's still hard for me to assimilate that and to integrate that to what I've learned and observed and experienced. But it makes a lot of sense when I hear you say it, but it's just not assimilated yet. So it's hard for me to.
And I'm not expecting you to assimilate it. I'm also very aware that this really does cross an edge in what we're used to perceiving and thinking. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it does. Okay, just one thing. It does open up a lot of perspectives for me. So this is very interesting, and I hope I will be able in a very near future to join your classes. I don't know when, but it's really very interesting for me, and I really like to congratulate you for this, because this is indeed for me a step further from what I've learned in CTI.
Oh, excellent! Yeah,
thank you for that.
And we have courses coming up. I'm saying this also for the purpose of the recording, so everyone else knows. We have courses coming up in Paris, September 21st and October 12th, and we have October 19th in Munich, and then I think it's October 26th in Toronto, the very next week. So everything is starting in September, October, and I'll be sending you guys those dates anyways in the thank you email. So yeah, I hope you can join, because then this gets fleshed out way more for you. And you know how to actively work with it rather than intellectually, because these webinars are on the intellectual side, right? It's philosophical. Yeah. Alina, Andrada, what do you take away, or very briefly, what's cool or fascinating for you?
The dynamic is very complex. It has been a lot of information here, and I feel I need time to sink it in.
Yeah.
It's definitely going through the module where it's more in depth. It's a way to go. Now we have just a way to see how complex it is, and it's okay, but it was very interesting.
Excellent. Okay, I will say yes, it can get very complex, but at the center of it all, it actually is really, really, really simple.
Yeah,
it's just very hard for us to admit that it could be that simple. Right? We're addicted to complexity.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And Andrada, did you have anything you'd like to say before we close? I'll unmute you here. Or I don't know if I can. I'm trying. No, it doesn't do it. I don't know if Andrada is still connected or not. She's okay, because if I can't unmute her, I don't know why, but okay. So thank you, Andrada, Alina, Philippe, and everyone else. There were a few people that had to go. They were texting saying they had to leave. So thank you very much for joining this call. Yeah, it's big. Like, nothing can get solved in the 90 minutes, and it's not expecting to solve. What I'm going to say to close is that we start out as victims, and our victim experience actually gives us a rich life experience. We do have the opportunity to turn the tables and become the persecutor. But if we only move between victim, persecutor again and again and again and again, and we're not accepting either role, that's creating toxic suffering. At some point, if we want to get off that wheel of karma, we could say, the way out is to cut the strings, let go, and forgive. The number one reason we would become a victim again or be a persecutor is if we want to exact revenge. retaliate or balance the scales. That's the hardest thing to do because it feels unnatural, is to, if something swings, to one side and we say, okay, we'll leave it at that without needing to balance it back, it's going to feel like a very empty part in ourselves, very empty piece of our lives. But when we have enough resilience to say, it's not that it doesn't matter, but it's that I'm permanent. So, I contain all the experience, fine, I'm resilient, I can let that one go unconditionally. Then we are now off the cycle because we're not creating new obligations. So, that's what I suggest to work on, is build your resilience and then build your ability to unhook and not need anything back. To trust that there is a natural give and receive, and that I don't have to create need in order to feel validated. I don't need to create pain in order to feel powerful. That's, I guess, how I would sum it up. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to stop the recording here. If there's anything else you guys need, I can hang out. So thank you everyone for joining, and